Hello and welcome to the podcast. My guest is Justin Bolde, aka Mr. Watson. He's a nationally ranked Category 1 cyclist, and before his cycling career, Justin was into skateboarding and motocross and the partying lifestyle that went with it. He was drinking, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and really headed down a dark path. He left that lifestyle and discovered bicycle racing. He started out racing overweight, out of shape, but quickly rose up through the ranks and last year got second place at the national championships. Justin's story is truly inspiring and will motivate anyone who wants to level up in life. Please welcome Justin Bolde. Okay, here we are. I'm excited to have Justin Bolde here on the podcast, aka Mr. Watson. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in.
Yep.
Your story is incredible. When I first met you, I had no idea of your background. And so I'd love you to just dive in and tell people, because it's a great journey from being overweight and out of shape, basically, to a nationally ranked Cat 1 cyclist. And not a lot of people have done that.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear the story.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of a weird to build up to like me getting onto an actual bicycle, because I never thought in a million years I would ever be on a bike. I'd see the cyclists and it just wasn't my thing. I grew up here in Naples, Florida, kind of in the backwoods in the Golden Gate Estates. I grew up on 4-wheelers and dirt bikes with a bunch of guys and skateboarding and all this extreme sports out in the woods, playing in the mud all day. So like that whole cycling lifestyle was never really exposed to me. I had Huffies and I had bikes that we built in the backyard and just junkers, riding up the street. So, my mom, I ended up moving out to Arizona when I was about 15 years old. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer at the time, so we were moving for her treatment. And when I went out to Arizona, I kind of really dove into the lifestyle of skateboarding and everything that went along with that, the late nights, the partying, the drugs, the drinking. And I really lived that lifestyle for quite a while. A lot of traveling to California to do skate trips and filming. And from there, I had just so many injuries and I kind of lost, the ability to really skate at the level I wanted to. I had multiple broken ankles and sprained ankles and wrist and concussions. So I went to something else called motocross.
Much safer, right?
Much safer sport. You had, you wore helmets and pads. So I started doing motocross, and I wasn't particularly like awesome at motocross, but I was out riding with my buddies, and my mom ended up passing away at the time when I was 21 years old, and I kind of was at like a standstill in my life. And I really was going down a really dark path in Arizona with, heavy drinking and drugs. And I kind of made the decision one day to just up and leave. And I drove cross country, no stops. I actually stopped once. I fell asleep in Tallahassee at a rest stop after driving from Phoenix, Arizona, nonstop across, smoking cigarettes, slamming Red Bulls and Monsters and whatever else to stay awake. And so I make it down to Naples, Florida, and there's no thoughts of ever being a competitive athlete at that point. And it was just getting on my feet, getting a job and refocusing. Well, I get this job at this animal hospital locally, and there is my coworker there, her name's Joanne Gonzalez, pretty well known within the cycling community here. She had a horrific accident, but she is the main reason I got into cycling. It's her and my wife, Samantha. My wife was getting into 5Ks at the time. It was like 2014, 2015.
And how old are you at this point?
22, 23,
okay.
Something like that. Yeah, I was kind of, overweight at the time. I was still really big into drinking, and we would go out and do these 5K runs, and we would go out and ride our bikes, but there would always be drinking involved. It would be like, okay, let's do a beer run. Let's go ride our bikes, and then we'll go to the bar after. So there wasn't any it was just for fun at that point. And Joanne said, you should really start riding with the group. There's a great group called Naples Velo in town. And I said, okay, I'll go check it out. I show up, get dropped immediately. I'm like, I can't hang with these. Yeah, I'm going 18 miles an hour. And these guys, every ride here is 25 miles an hour. So how am I going to keep up with that? But for whatever reason, something clicked in my head that day, and I wanted to be fast on the bike. So I just kept showing up over and over and over again. And there would be days that I would show up in the parking lot, no joke, roll up in my car, stop, stare at everybody and watch them ride away and be like, today's not the day. I can't do it. And I would go back home and my wife would be like, what happened? I can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's complete intimidation.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, the build up from there, my first race, I rode with Naples Velo for about a year or two. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to jump into my first race. And there was a local team in town called 239 Racing.
Sure.
And, you know, we went to this race in, I think like it was Inverness area. And I got dropped within the first 10 minutes. And from that point, I got dropped. I drove home in complete silence, nothing. And something clicked. I quit drinking. I quit everything. And I just said, I want to be a racer and I want to figure this out. And, you know, kind of how it happened. And there was a lot of people that said, you can't do it. And I remember sitting down at the coffee shop and you know, hey, I want to race bikes. And they're like, well, you know, you can't do it because of this, and this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just never listened to them. It's just,
Good for you.
I just find it as like, I'm just going to do it. You know, well, you don't want to do this because you have to listen to all these sponsorships and talks and, you know, it's hard work, the training, and you're overweight. You don't have the body type, the lifestyle. Right. For whatever reason, I just kept grinding along and, I figured it out. So
that's amazing. I'd never really heard your full story like that. And what's interesting is that it took you going up to that race near Inverness, getting dropped and just being determined, like, no, like I really am interested in this. I'm going to stop drinking. Yeah. I'm going to get serious.
Yeah. It's actually funny. I have that race on my Strava still. And I remember I wrote DNF on the Strava title. Yeah. And I put like a big write-up about what happened. And I still left it the same. And I go back to that race and I look at what I wrote. And it's constant, almost like excuses that I made for myself why I got dropped. Okay. And I just, you can't make it. I just don't make excuses. I don't, you know, you have to put the work in, you have to put the time in and the efforts. And, so I really do reflect back onto that first race quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people would have just quit.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I tried this racing. I've been riding with Naples Velo. I'm getting dropped. Sometimes I go home. I drive home. You go to the race, you get dropped. And a lot of people say, you know what? I'm not cut out for this. Everyone else is right. And I can do something else. But you're like, no, this is really fascinating for me. Yeah. I want to get deeper into it. Right. So you're starting out racing as like a Cat 5, Cat 4 at the beginning level. So for people listening and watching this, the way bicycle racing works, you start out as a Cat 5 and you move your way all the way up to a Category 1. Yeah. Right. So you made it all the way up to the elite level, Category 1. I'd love to hear for you, like some of those other points along the way where you're like, should I keep going? Like a threshold event where you're like, I'm going all the way to Cat 1. Did you think you could make it to Cat 1? Like points along the way where you just kind of kept going, like we're encouraged.
I think what happened as soon as something clicked in my brain when I got dropped and I said, I'm going to do it. I just never stopped and I never looked back. So from that day I got dropped, I went back and I changed my entire lifestyle and I started training. And there's a couple guys that were in town. His name was Jameson and Mike Egan, which, he's pretty familiar. A lot of people have heard of him here. Big time Swifter. I used to go and work out with them at 5:15 in the morning every single day. Wow. And I'd have no idea what I was doing. These guys are way fitter than me. And I would Jameson would pull up and he was straight to business. It was like, let's go work out. Cause he was on a time crunch. He'd give me the workout and they'd go and I'd get dropped. And I would do my own thing and I would never quit to work out. Nice. Even if I was by myself in Pelican Bay in the dark, I never quit to work out. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew he told me, hold this wattage for this long and make it happen. So I did. And I did that over and over again. And eventually I went to another race and I won. Nice. So it worked. Okay. So as a Cat 5, I won. And then you can upgrade pretty quick from Cat 5 to Cat 4. Yeah. And so I did a couple Cat 4 races and I really it was always, I was breaking away and riding off the front of all those races. So I thought to like that kind of motivates somebody when they continue, like they win, right? So that
you get addicted to winning, right?
Yeah, almost like that. Yeah, that addiction of winning. So that just kept the fire going and going. And I kept racing a whole lot more. And then from Cat 4 to Cat 3, and this is where like from Cat 3, I did one race which was called the Sunshine Grand Prix, and I won every event. So it was a time trial, road race, and a crit, and the overall. So I won the overall in that race, and I was immediately upgraded to a Cat 2 at that point. So I kind of was like, okay, I'm a Cat 2. I'm almost at my goal, and this has only been about a year, maybe year and a half time frame at that point. And so to get up to a Category 1 ranking, it's pretty difficult, and you need to get a lot more points, and the competition's a lot heavier at that ranking. So I thought, I'm not really going to get my upgrade points staying locally. Let me travel. So I ended up doing a couple traveling races where I flew out there back to Arizona, where I'm from, and there's a race called Valley of the Sun. And I did the category 2 race there, and I ended up winning the crit. I came in second in the road race, and I did good in the overall. So I was able to gather quite a few points from that stage race. And then I traveled to a couple other places and did good. And I got my Category 1 upgrade. And that kind of took from 2017 to 2019, I would think. I'm not perfect on those dates, but it didn't take too long to get the upgrade. But it was more like the fuel of just wanting to win. And once, I got that taste of winning, it just kind of all fell together. And I just,
So it's kind of like at the beginning, you're getting these victories, you're moving up, really flying through the ranks. Because that's actually not that common to kind of just blast up through the ranks all the way to Cat 2. And you're winning and you're like loving the taste of victory. So you get at the Category 1, 2 level where there's a lot of competition. So you got to really push yourself to win. And then, it was just like that. Sounds like that hunger and that kind of just desire to win feels so
What's
good.
funny about cycling is that anybody can be strong, right? Anybody can put the time in and get to become a strong cyclist. But to be a successful racer, that takes skill and it takes smarts. So, when you say it's not easy to do, it really isn't. But you really have to have a background in this, like, cornering and accelerations and reading a race, and that takes, I really feel that like motocross helped me with that, and skateboarding helped me with that, because I had all of that balance and the reactions, and that kind of helped me go through the categories a little bit quicker than normal without crashing myself out and ending myself really quick, which tends to happen a lot.
I mean, having a motocross background helps so much. Because I can't even imagine doing motocross, just the kind of skills and reaction time and guts you have to do that, flying through the air.
I think with cycling, like a lot of people, that kind of discourages them is crashing. And it's a big part of racing is crashing. And once again, being from that background of extreme sports, you kind of accept that that's going to happen. So, and really, I didn't have my first big slam in racing until I was a Cat 2, I think. So I kind of made it out through all the like the sketchy ranking. And I had my first real slam as a Cat 2 at Athens.
Well, that's when a lot of the crashes happens, like the lower categories, or people are just starting out. And they're nervous, and you could be really strong and someone could crash you out. That's an amazing story. Like I know you, I ride with you, but I had not heard your full story. And this is fun to do it during the podcast, because I'm like genuinely reacting to how inspiring that is. What's really strikes me about your story is just that decision driving back from that race to just stop drinking and just turn things around. Was it hard for you to stop drinking? I mean, because you were doing it fairly often.
So I was doing it quite a bit. Honestly. I used to smoke cigarettes, and I was able to quit that. And I will tell you, quitting cigarettes is way harder than quitting drinking. Because cigarettes consumed my life. It was on the phone, in the car, when you wake up and drink your coffee, like smoking a cigarette. And not only that, like the damage it does to your lungs is crazy. I don't even know how I can breathe half the time, because I was like 2 packs a day at one point.
Wow.
You know?
I used to smoke too. I think I told you.
Yeah,
that was after I raced. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
But it is so addictive.
Yeah. So quitting drinking, when I made that decision, it was almost like I just had to switch my night lifestyle. So it was like, okay, I'm not gonna go out to dinner that much anymore, because that's like a triggering point for drinking. I'm not gonna go out and grill steaks anymore, because that's a triggering point for me. So I just stopped doing that for a little bit, and then I just had to, you know, change that dynamic of my friends too. And I spent so much time cycling that, you know, I wanted to ride my bike, so I didn't want to wake up hungover anymore. So that was easy. I mean, so
it just, riding the bike felt better.
Yeah. It was almost like when I'm done riding, you just go home. There's no more after ride beers. Let's go home and go to bed and focus on the next day.
Had enough of that lifestyle. So I want to ask you techniques that you use, maybe psychologically or whatever, to push yourself in a race, either like in a time trial, or like when you got to bridge to a breakaway, or you're back in a sprint and you got to dig deep. Like, is there maybe like your pre-race prep or during the race, or something, like things that have worked for you where you're able to like push yourself really, really extremely hard?
Yeah. So I read that question, and I really put some thought into this, and I could not figure out what it is other than pure insanity. Because like I do like time trials. Like, I like time trials and I like breakaways, and I don't feel right on the bike unless I'm pushing myself. Like, so many people, when you race bikes, they're like, you need to sit in, you need to be patient. The strongest guy doesn't always win. And it's so true. But I just like to be at the front of a bike race, and I just like to push myself. So like, quitting isn't an option. Like, I just pedal. Like, there's been points, I remember at Valley of the Sun when I did the time trial, I went out there on a road bike. It was a Specialized delay
on a road bike
for a time trial.
Okay.
And it was a time stage race. And I remember, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this time trial on a Specialized delay. And I'm looking at all these guys in their skin suits and teardrop helmets and full aero bikes, disc wheels. And I just was like, whatever, I'm just going to send it. You know, I'm going to go as hard as I can. And, you know, I remember tasting blood. So that's how deep I went. And my throat, the turbulent airflow, I just never quit. It was like, okay, my heart rate's 185, just keep pedaling. I mean, you're not done until you're done. There's the finish line. So I kept my power what I said I was going to be. And I've always kind of been like that, and all, you know, just pedal as hard as you can. And if it gets too painful, then you need to knock it down 10 watts and then keep pedaling. So
so you're not really afraid of the pain?
No, I kind of embrace the pain. I kind of like it.
I think you're right on. Like, it, not necessarily insanity, but like embracing the pain, which is really counterintuitive, because we're wired to, as humans, avoid pain and seek pleasure. Like, that's how we're wired. So to actually embrace the pain is, you're crossing over into kind of a different psychological zone, because that doesn't feel right. Right. And so, you remember last year when I followed your wheel on the Saturday ride?
Yes.
That was one of those times, honestly, in my life. So I used to do a bunch of bike racing. But there's probably like a handful of times where I pushed myself super, super hard. And last year, riding behind you was one of those times where I saw you break away, and it's a group ride, but we get a little serious. And my mindset was, I'm going to stay with you as long as I can. And then I was like, screw it, man. I'm going to keep going, keep going. And then there was a point where I was like, bring it on. Like, I hope he goes even harder. Like, I went kind of psycho on myself. Right. And it was just a game. I know it's a game, but I think you do have to get into that sort of that zone of like, bring it on. Like, what else do you got? Otherwise, if you're say to yourself, I can't wait for this race to end, or like, oh my God, I hope there's not an attack. If you're shying away from it, like in psychology, we call it approach avoidance spectrum. So like, if you lean into the problem, like the anxiety is going to go down and you're going to crush it. If you're timid and you're kind of like, I don't know, like shy about it, it's going to hurt more and you're going to get worse results.
Yeah.
So it's like, you got to dive in, right?
Yeah, you have to, because it really is a constant battle in your head when you're doing these time trials, because you part of your mind is telling you to quit. And, it just happened on this past Saturday ride. I broke away from the group, and, you know, like you said, it's a group ride, but I use these as things to challenge myself. I have people chasing me, and it makes me push myself a little harder. So in my brain, it's like, okay, well, just stop, you know, they're going to catch you. It's okay. You go around this corner, you see that they're almost caught you.
Right.
You make this decision in your head, okay, I'm just going to sit up and then I'll reset for the sprint. But in my mind, I just go push harder. Like, don't let them catch you. Oh, you're approaching this stoplight. Hopefully it doesn't turn red. Just keep going, keep going. And, you know, I ended up staying away the whole race, or the whole ride. And I could have just threw it all away by just sitting up, and I wouldn't have had that effort. I actually hit like an all-time, you know, power PR
nice
for this year. So that's good, trending upwards. And I wouldn't have had that if I didn't have the people chasing me and I didn't argue in my head constantly about pushing myself further.
Right. Well, it is almost like there's two voices in your head, right? Like, for example, this morning I woke up and was like, there's this thing called the Hour of Power here in Naples. Tuesday morning, 7 a.m., almost like a race pace.
Right? It definitely is race pace.
Which is like the earliest you're getting your heart rate up. It's really the only place in the country, I think, where it happens. And honestly, I go from one voice to another. Like in the morning, I'm like grumpy, you know, like maybe I'll sleep in. And then what happens is gradually that bolder voice takes over. But I think for all of us, there is those two voices of like, I want to quit, I want to relax, I want to sit back on the couch. And the other one's like, no, let's go. Like, I'm not afraid of the pain.
Well, the hardest interval is getting out the door, is what I always say. It's so difficult. When you first get up, everything's just, you're sleepy, you haven't had your coffee. But as soon as you get out on that bike, for me, it's business. Like, it's time to work, and something switches, but I have to get out that door. If I don't get out that door, it's like I can make every excuse in the world. I'll do it later, and then later comes and you get busy. And so one thing leads to another, and that's part of the success too, is making sure you get your work done when it needs to be done.
Do you have like a pre-race ritual or ways to get psyched up? Because I mean, you can get in that lean in kind of zone, but you want to lean in even more. So I imagine like you're at a race and maybe you're not totally psyched and prepared to race. Is there something you do to get more into that zone before a race, like a ritual?
My most successful races have been by myself with nobody around me. And I wake up and I go and I put my music on and I don't talk to anybody. And then I've also had good results with my family being there, and the chaos, and where my daughter has to go to the bathroom 10 minutes before the start of the race. And, you know, and then she's hungry, and it's like, and then I go out and I break away. But it's, you know, I have to be in my own mental zone, and I need to get control of my mind. If I don't like being at the race courses early and listening to stories about the course. Oh, there's a giant manhole cover here, and there crashes on turn 3. I don't care about any of that, because that's when it gets into my head and messes everything up. And I just had that experience this past weekend at Athens. So it's like, I can't be there all day. So you know, my biggest is putting my head down, don't talk to anybody, headphones in, listen to some music, get on the trainer, warm up, unclip, get to the start line, do business. So
get really, really focused, no distractions.
No distractions, even on the start line, unless if it's my teammate, I'll talk to them, but very, you know, it's a fist bump. Hey, how you doing? There's no chit chat. Everything comes after the race. And it just seems to be the best way to
I like that too. When I used to race, I would always warm up alone, never with my team. And they would kind of tease me about it. But it worked for me. They would all be joking around, laughing, and just like not really focused. And some of them would do whatever, it worked for them. But for me, I had to like be like meditative, music. And so it's interesting for different personalities. You got to understand what your process is before, right?
I think it's just the way my brain works. I overanalyze things, and if I start thinking about, you know, crashes and how I'm going to mess up, it's almost like my body just follows suit with that, and I throw it all away. So I
Right.
I stay positive in my own mindset.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I think that's something we all struggle with, is like, it's so easy to focus on something negative.
Yeah.
Because again, that's the way the brain is wired. Like, where's the danger? Where's the problem? Right.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really help, because I mean, you've done enough races. You can trust yourself, trust your balance, trust your instincts. So it doesn't really make sense to worry about what could go wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so you should get there and just focus on.
Because very rarely does anything go wrong.
Right.
It's,
like
it's a
most,
race.
Most of the time it goes pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think is like the biggest, I don't know, psychological pitfall for, not for you necessarily, but for racers in general?
Feeling like they don't belong.
Ah.
And that's so, like, this sport is very cliquey when you
Right.
first get into it. And there's
Right.
little pods of groups that like are really hard to break through. And I still experience this as a national level racer.
Yeah.
You know, I travel, and I went to Park City this past year, and I show up to the local group ride, and I say hi, and everybody kind of ignores you, and they don't want to say hi back. And
Right.
it's like, what's going on, guys? Like,
Yeah,
I'm just a bike rider. So the break into that group, I could imagine, like, if you are a entry level cyclist and you don't show up looking the part, you might not get the response you want. You might not feel welcome. And then they go home and they ride by themselves, and they never really can get to their full potential. So it's really sticking to it and feeling like you belong, because this sport is for everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, keep showing up and prove that you do belong.
Right.
And,
Right. So you're talking about imposter syndrome.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what kind of the buzzword is. It's that feeling of showing up, feeling a little intimidated.
Yeah.
Like maybe these people are better than me, or maybe I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing.
Yeah. And if you get dropped, you feel like, okay, maybe I don't belong here.
Right.
And, you know, we go back to, that's what I struggled with. I don't belong. I'm not fast enough. But,
Right.
you know, the more you show up, it just kind of all falls into place, and you know, kind of surprise yourself over and over again.
Yeah.
So.
And at the beginning, you even had people kind of dissuading you. Like, it's like, oh, I don't know,
Constant.
you're a little too heavy.
Constant people.
Just like, you would think they'd get some more encouragement.
Constant. Always people telling you can't, and anything in life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny, when I started racing, I was age 12 when I was racing.
Yeah.
So I was like the little mascot. So everyone encouraged me.
That's awesome.
And I had, this is in the Madison, Wisconsin area, and just like all the riders there, total encouragement. But imagine if you start a little later.
Yeah. Which I did.
Right. Then you show up in the parking lot, and it's like, oh, here's a grown man. Like, who is this guy?
Yep.
It's kind of like alpha stuff, you know?
That's exactly what it is. Alpha stuff. Yeah, for sure.
But like you said, if you just keep showing up and showing up and showing up, eventually your brain goes, well, I guess I belong here because I keep showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And, you know, it's weird, as a human, people want to belong to something.
Sure.
They want to be part of a group. So it's, you know, it's tough to just ride by yourself. It's hard to self-motivate without like an actual goal in mind.
Right.
And as a new cyclist, your goal is to ride a bike and have fun.
Yeah.
And no new cyclist hops on and goes, I want to be a Cat 1 cyclist right away. No, they want to ride their bike. They want to be with the group of friends and go out and have fun. And then all that craziness comes after.
Right.
You start getting that talk about being competitive.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just got to keep showing up.
Yeah.
I love it. Let's shift gears here. I know you're a fan of David Goggins.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's interesting. Your story is in a way similar to his. And so tell us about the Goggins 40% rule.
Yeah. So I'm actually just listening to his book now. I've always kind of listened to his YouTube.
I've never listened to the book all the way through. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm actually like halfway through his book right now, and his story is amazing. It's kind of crazy. But so I put 40% on my bars. And I was first introduced to David Goggins from an old teammate right before a race. It was like his ritual, like listen to David Goggins. I was like, I have no idea who this is. So I'm listening like, oh man, this is pretty motivating stuff.
Yeah.
So then I got hooked on it. And 40% rule. So I have that on my handlebars. And if I put that on Instagram, everybody's asking me what 40% means, because are they thinking I'm training at 40% effort, or what is it? So 40% is, you know, I look at that if I'm in a breakaway or if I'm in a race, and it's like a mindset. Like, so your body wants to stop working at 40%. but you really still have 60% more to give.
Okay.
So it's like pushing through when your brain tells you to stop and, and go more.
Right.
And give it 100%.
Right.
And that's going to cause pain. discomfort. You're going to question if you can even do it. But as soon as you break through that 40% threshold, it's, you know, that's how you win races. I mean, that's what others aren't willing to do.
Right.
And so I've always kind of put something on my handlebars that reminds me when I'm suffering. You know, I have on my other bike, I have push watts. So when I'm staring down at my bars, it's, you know, push watts.
Right.
Go at it. 40%, go harder. You're not going to die. You're fine.
Right. So it's basically a message to you to remind you
to me
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you can go into a race and we all know, like, maybe you have a bad night's sleep, you're a little sick, you're a little off, or tired. And if you are tired, you are less mentally available and focused. So if you had the 40% there on your handlebars, you could hit that point where it's like a red line, right? You know, oh, your brain goes, oh, this hurts.
Yeah.
And you look at the 40% and you go, oh, right, there's 60% more in the tank.
Yeah.
And you just push past it.
Yeah, just keep going.
So it's like the sound barrier, kind of.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I always stare at all the time, even through my training. It's constant, just always looking at that. Yeah. Remember, don't quit.
This is kind of random, but have you ever tried like cold water therapy at all? Or like cold showers or anything like that?
So every time, so when I take my shower, I take, you know, the regular warm shower, and then I turn it to cold. And
that's what I do.
And I blast myself.
That's what I do
water,
too.
And it's brutal.
Yeah.
And, you know, I haven't done a whole lot of research on that, but I heard what it does is it helps stimulate the blood flow and help recover muscles.
Yeah.
And it kind of shocks your heart.
Right.
And there's some people telling me that it's dangerous, can kill you, but I don't know about all that.
I guess, you know, visit your doctor before.
Hey,
doc, can I take cold showers? Like, why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I've seen a couple of my friends do like the ice baths, the inflatable ones, but I haven't dabbled in any of that.
Yeah. I started doing cold showers probably about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And specifically for that sort of 40% thing where, I start out hot. Yeah, because I'm a wuss. Like, I want to start out totally cold, but maybe I should start doing that. But it's that point of like stepping into the pain, and it's not, you know, it's not going to kill you. Yep. And I've gotten to the point now where I crave it. Yeah. Right. And so I'll step right in, like chest first, and I'll feel that initial shock. Yep. And I'll actually like kind of say in my mind, like, bring it on. Yeah. And I'll just like embrace the shock, and then the shock doesn't even feel like a shock anymore. Yeah.
That's kind of like how a breakaway works too.
Exactly.
The initial shock when you initiate a breakaway or you bridge to a break is so painful.
You're just dying.
Yeah, you're dying and you're almost there, or you almost have it established. Yep. And then once it's established, something flips in your brain and you can be doing almost the same watts. But since you made it successful, it is now like a pleasure that you are going to win the race. It's almost like if you've ever experienced, like, you know, in a race, the last, you know, if you're going to win, everything, all that pain disappears because it's like that, like a feeling comes over you. Like, I just completed this, even though you're still, your heart rate's 185 and you're killing yourself up the final climb. Yeah. But you know, the work is done and you made it. So I think it's the same thing with the shower, is just hop in and this eventually that pain will disappear.
Yeah. It's like that lean in mentality. Yeah. So for people watching, listening, I'm not necessarily prescribing cold showers. Check with your doctor first. Yes. But it's the point is it's the whole idea of doing things that are painful, but have a benefit. And you're really mastering your mind by controlling that whole pain pleasure thing. Like, you're in charge, not your body.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like jumping into a cold pool.
Exactly.
Which I hate. I hate so much, man. I love the hot weather and I hate cold. So it really is like a mental thing.
Right. So it means you should do more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's training your brain to, you know.
Yeah. That's it. I want to ask you, do you have any advice for like up and coming racers who are starting out? I mean, we talked about just showing up, talked about keep going. But yeah, like some advice you might have for someone who wants to be a Cat 1.
You know, the main thing I always say to somebody is have fun with it, especially in the earlier categories as a Cat 5, Cat 4, even Cat 3. Have fun with it. If you're not having fun, if you're sitting there chewing your stem every day and staring at numbers, you're going to lose that passion to why you started. Yeah. And you're going to quit eventually. I mean, I've seen it happen 100 times. People, they get into this sport, they want to get coaches, they want to do Zwift, they want to do all this training, and then they burn themselves out because all they do, it becomes a job. Yeah. So I really say go out, ride with some good friends, some good groups, learn the basic skills that are needed: acceleration, braking, cornering, bump drills with your buddies in the grass, kind of learn how to ride a bike. And then, as you get further into that, higher categories, then you're going to have to start training harder to be competitive. And I saw something you posted the other day, I think it was just yesterday, about 50% of the group don't really put the work in, and then the other 50 do. Well, the other 50%. So but as a Cat 5, Cat 4, I feel like everybody's kind of not, there might be one or two guys that are really putting into work because they come from different sports, but they're in and out of that category so quick. They become a Cat 5, they break away from the field, and then they want more. Ex-pro triathletes, that happens all the time. They come into the sport, category 5, they roll off the front lap the field 5 times, and then they're category 4, and they do the same thing until they're up at category 2, and then things change a little bit. So just have fun and embrace the journey for sure.
Because especially at the beginning level, you got to cut yourself some slack. Like, you got to give yourself some grace. Like, you're just starting out. So the way I always look at it is like, what if you were your own coach, or what if you were your own best friend? So instead of like just starting out like, oh man, you're like, I got dropped, I suck. Like, no, what would a coach or a best friend say? Hey man, you just started. Keep going. Do the next one. And I think that's a problem a lot of racers or athletes have, of being just way too self-critical. Like, that's good to a certain point because it keeps you accountable. But I see a lot of athletes are just beat up on themselves.
I've taken a lot of losses in my racing days for sure. And someone once told me that you don't learn anything when you win. And when you lose is when you go home and you look at everything and you go, okay, this is what I messed up on. This is what I need to do to become better. When you win, you go home and you think you're a champion, and you don't ever think about that race again. You're like, I won. You don't think about how you could take corner 3 better because it worked out for you. But when you lose, corner 4, corner 3 positioning all changes your mindset.
That's so interesting. That is so true. If you win a race, you're not analyzing where did I go wrong. You probably made a lot of mistakes during the race.
It just worked out for you.
And if you get like 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, like you just got that place, and there's someone else beat you. Right. But you're like, oh, what in your mind. And that can be valuable to like look back. How can I do better for sure? But then there's a point of diminishing returns. Where you just gotta like catch yourself. Like, dude, I'm like beating up on myself. This is not productive. I've learned 5 lessons. Time for the next race.
Turn the page.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And it's funny. I had a terrible race at Athens, and I beat myself up for about a day for it. And then I gave myself one day to have my pity party.
Pity party.
And then you come back to your home, and everybody asks what happened. So you have to make that decision. Do you want to keep reopening that wound, that pull that scab off over and over? You just go, I had a bad race, or you don't have to justify your bad races to people. You just you turn the page and you move on, and you focus on the next goal. And that's hard to do for a lot of people, because people want to dwell on why they messed up and how they can
I mean, we love to do that, right? It's like, oh, let me figure it out, because again, the brain is wired to like figure out a problem. And sometimes it's just like the solution is like somebody beat you. Like it's faster. It's like a competitive race. You get like
150 people were faster.
It's like, guess what, somebody beat you, and that's okay. So I think it's best if like if athletes look at their career almost like a stock market graph of like, you're a great investment. Play the long game. As long as like year after year the chart's going up, you're trending dips upwards and peaks. So
for sure, that's a good way to look at it.
Tell us about your current team, Team Waldo.
So Team Waldo was actually founded by Brian Denny. And
it's here in Naples.
He's here. He's a local rider in Naples. And it started out for like a Ragbri team. And they all.
So let's explain what Ragbri is.
So Ragbri is like a ride across Iowa. I've never done it before.
I never have either. I've heard stories.
It's one big party. So he had a group of guys and girls go, and they think the whole logo has a story behind it from it. And when he moved down to Naples, you know, during the pandemic, he started riding with a couple guys, Carlos and David and Andre, and they made this little team down in Naples called Team Waldo Racing.
Yeah.
And it kind of really grew pretty quick within the community.
Yeah.
And now I have worked with Brian to make this a kind of like a development team / national level team. So kind of got a couple races on the calendar that I'm going to race Team Waldo for. And, you know, these guys are racing all around the state of Florida, and we've went up to Athens. So yeah, it's just a bunch of guys that are local and they want to race bikes. It's a super inclusive group, and anybody that wants to race for it, you know, they come on in. We got a team van. We drive them to the races. We make it super easy because the logistics behind racing can be a nightmare too. When you have no idea, you know, you're driving 4 hours by yourself up to a race. Yeah. And then something happens, right? And we go back to you got dropped. Well, it makes it a little bit easier for these people that get into racing, because now they don't have to drive by themselves. Now, if they get dropped, they still have that support group that they can have fun with, and we go and eat and make the whole experience fun. So it's a local group thing, and hopes to make it national one day.
Cool. I know a little bit about the story about RAGBRAI, and Waldo is like, where's Waldo? Yeah. I think that's the basics there. So I think it's the 50th anniversary of RAGBRAI, or the 25th or something this year. Yeah. Some big deal. I have a buddy who does it every year. It's like, hey, come on, do it. I've never done it, but again, it's like a big party.
People race it too, right?
They do. Yeah.
Okay. So there's like a competitive.
And there's a lot of beer drinking. Too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've heard that.
From what I've heard, maybe not the best.
Maybe in my older days, it would have been
right.
Style.
Right. Tell us also about the National Cycling League, the NCL.
Oh, so that's a new race series. That's 4 races. So they did one in Miami Beach. They're going to do one in the Porsche track in Atlanta, Denver, and Washington, D.C. Okay. So it's 50 racers, and it's almost like a sprint every single lap. Yeah. And
I watched the Miami race on TV, and I saw you get some points there. So
it's totally different style of racing, where, you know, you're not everybody's waiting for that last couple laps to get into position and try to win the race. The race is from the actual start to the finish. Everybody's trying to gain points.
And every single lap, there's points.
There's 3, 2, 1.
That's amazing.
And then I think there's triple points for the finishing. Okay. So there is some incentive to get the win. Right. But definitely, I mean, and what it turns into is that it's a smaller field, so you can really kind of use your power to move around a little bit easier than these fields that have 150 guys.
50 is a small field.
It's a small field. Yeah. So if you want to move up, you can kind of move up on the outside, where you have 100 guys. It's really kind of like that bubble that you get stuck. It's like a washing machine. So you have to move up a lot slower. It takes a couple laps. And what happens is that every lap there's a sprint. So then you have these guys that shoot off the front sprinting, and then they sit up. Yeah. And then there's a bunch of people that try to counterattack that to get the breakaway. Right. So if you're kind of like that middle domestique workhorse, you're working so hard because you're leading out your guy. Oh, man. The sprints go, and then you need to reset, bring back the breakaways, and then reset for another sprint that's another 40 seconds away.
That's crazy.
And it's over and over again for an hour.
So this is the first season of the National Cycling League. It's really exciting news for American cycling, because American cycling is criteriums. Yeah. That's like, even like European pros who come here and do criteriums, like, that was hard. Yeah. Like, it's American style racing, and it sounds like they really want to build it up into more of these sort of Grand Prix in different cities. Yeah. It sounds really exciting. And so you're doing that, and you did the very first one in
Miami Beach.
How did that compare? Was that like one of the harder crits you've done? I mean, it's probably a different dynamic.
Like I said, it's only 50 people. Yeah. So it was hard because of the constant efforts throughout the race, but it wasn't as hard mentally, if that makes sense. Because when you're in these big races with a lot of people, you're kind of just staring at the person in front of you, and you make up one spot at a time. Right. And then so many things can go bad really quick with that many people at that speed, because you can't see exactly what's going on in front of that bubble. Right. And with this race, 50 people, you can kind of analyze the field and go, okay, hey, there's a guy breaking away up here. I'm going to go ahead and skirt up 4 people and sit on this wheel, and you can get up to the front a little bit faster.
Yeah.
But like I said, when you're that domestique, that's what I was. You know, I sat at the front of the race almost the entire time. So I averaged 185 beats per minute for the entire race, which I broke every record I've ever had on heart rate. Once again, it was Miami Beach in the middle of the day. And it was hot, and the atmosphere and the energy from the people. But yeah, if you look at it on paper, it was probably one of my hardest races. But mentally, I felt comfortable there. Yeah. And I liked the style of racing where it was almost like over-unders for an hour.
Right. That's super interesting. Just the mental kind of calories that you burn. Like if you're in a dangerous race, it's really tiring. It is. Really exhausting. Even if it's not, your heart rate isn't pegged at 185, it's just really exhausting.
And it takes years to really get that, like that mindset down, how to handle those emotions, because everybody has those emotions, whether they want to admit it or not. Before a race, they're questioning things within their own head. And some people have really good skills to shelf that. Yeah. And that's what it takes. And that takes years. Yes. I think for me, at least, it's taken years to shelf my emotions and go, okay, this is just another bike race. Yeah. You put the work in, you belong here. Right. Let's do it. Yeah. And that takes time.
It does. It really does take time. I think just the more you do it, the more you just get used to it. Yeah. So like if people are struggling with mental barriers in whatever sport, like if you just keep going, your brain will figure it out. Like you don't even necessarily have to master it. Like you'll just
surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded and are comfortable in racing. And you know, you don't want to be around somebody that's unsure about their fitness or unsure about the course. It's going to make you question things. Right. You want to be next to that guy that's done this since he's been 12 years old and he's ready to rock and roll. That's who you want to surround yourself with and kind of mirror their energy.
Absolutely.
And I've done that a lot. You know?
No, that's so true. So true. Well, Justin Bolde, we're about out of time. Tell people where they can find out more about you online.
Yeah. So I have an Instagram page. It's Mr. Watson, mr._Watson with a Z. And then my YouTube page is the exact same thing. I have a lot of race breakdowns from last year on racing. I do commentary on it. But yeah, those are my 2 main sources of social media at this point.
Cool. Yeah, I was watching your YouTube channel before the podcast, and I was telling you this. It's like one of the few channels that does that sort of pilot commentary during a race, and I think it's a great channel.
I do enjoy making
people should check it out. Yeah, you can really get a lot of insight on racing, and really, it's almost like going to school.
Well, a lot of people use it as like that going to school thing, because if I look at my videos that trend, certain point, like I have Tulsa Tough on there, I have Athens Twilight. And, you know, Athens just passed, where there's a huge tick in my views on that video. So a lot of people do refer back to these videos and look at the courses and, you know, how it plays out in my mind and, you know, how they can race a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's Mr. Watson on YouTube with the WATTZON.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So like the watts are on.
Watts.
Look out.
Like watts. Yep.
I love it. Well, Justin, it's great talking with you and great to hear your story, and everyone else listening and watching. Follow this guy on Instagram, on YouTube. So much great knowledge and such an inspiring story. Justin, thanks.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode with Justin Bolde. Such an inspiring story. Definitely check out his YouTube channel and his Instagram. Those are both linked in the description below. And thank you, as always, to listening to my sports psychology podcast. We try to interview inspiring people, bring you the knowledge and tactics and inspiration to level up in your life. If you're interested in working with me, you can go to michaelceely.com, check out some of my coaching services, and until next time, keep on leveling up.